Lollipop man's signature high fives have been stopped in their tracks.
Oh dear. Well, Neil Cotton, believed by local children... sorry. I'll start that all over again. This is a chap called Neil Cotton, and he's beloved by local kids in Howden, East Yorkshire. And he's been told by the council to stop the friendly high-fiving gesture, all in the name of health and safety.
But many parents and motorists are calling it nonsense. No surprises there. So apparently this chap, 57 years old, he spent the last 2 years brightening up the school run in the East Yorkshire town of Howden. There he is, looks like a nice guy, doesn't he? He has a cheerful attitude. He has his signature high fives. The children love it, the parents love it, he loves it. But no, the council says, get on with your job and stop the high fives.
This is the one area of employment where the council's trying to chivvy people on and get them to work harder rather than less hard. But I mean, what have we done in this country where we've sort of abandoned our sense of whimsy? I think adding a sense of whimsy to all jobs, I think, is a fundamental productivity measure, actually. I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to be doing it better. People are going to go into school or away from school with a smile on their face. What a joyful thing in a town in Yorkshire. I mean, amazing, brilliant. And yet, no, of course, the clipboards have to come out and the dour library monitor-style individuals. I bet they're all library monitors at school. They've just got to tell people that they can't have fun.
Yeah, so the children have to be shooed along. They can't be distracted by such frivolities as a high five.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. It's Monday. It's 9:30 on Monday, the 10th of July. Live across the United Kingdom, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So, 20 years ago today.
It's gone badly wrong. We really don't know at the moment. It's loud bangs.
We need ambulances and water to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. Russell Square is we're going to have it as a major incident. We'll get ambulances to see you wherever.
The 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings, where 4 suicide bombers killed 52 people and injured more than 700. But is Britain any safer today?
And this is particularly interesting if you have a child in your life who needs special needs support. Ministers are poised to scrap specialised school care plans, putting vital support for autistic and ADHD pupils on the line. Could we see another huge rebellion?
And death by mushroom in Australia. Erin Patson has been found guilty of triple murder after serving her estranged husband's family poisonous mushrooms.
Tax the wealthy. Labour is considering a new wealth tax of 2% on assets worth more than £10 million. Would this trigger a fresh exodus of rich Brits?
And policing overhaul, is this what we need? The Met Police boss, Sir Mark Rowley, wants 12 megaforces in England to replace the current system of 43 county forces. Do we need to reform the service, or do we need some bobbies on the beat?
Off the rails, US President Donald Trump has slammed the tech billionaire Elon Musk for launching the America Party, as Republicans fear that it may split the vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience. The electronic line calling system, unfortunately, was unable to track the last point, so we will replay the point.
It wasn't switched on. Wimbledon apologises after an official mistakenly switched off the AI line judge technology at a crucial moment in the centre court defeat for the last British woman, Sonné Kartal. Should we keep technology out of sport? The Mushroom Killer is extraordinary, isn't it?
It's an
When you read
extraordinary
it, you do
story.
think it's a work of fiction.
Yeah, it reads like an Agatha Christie novel. We will be interviewing somebody to get all the details. Like, it hasn't really been in the press a huge amount here until this verdict. I wasn't really aware of this story. So it's been on every news bulletin in Australia for months and months.
Yeah, amazing. Deliberately killing your in-laws.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm looking for some tips, Andrew, but...
No.
Look, it's not a funny story. She's been found guilty.
Yeah.
She's going to go to prison. But the chain of events leading up to this and how she got caught is particularly interesting, so don't miss that.
So we'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting
GBNews.com/Your Say. First, though, 60-second news with Sophia Hill.
Very good morning. The headlines just after 9:30. Sir Keir Starmer and Sir Sadiq Khan have laid wreaths this morning in remembrance of the July 7th bombings. King Charles has called on the nation to remember the extraordinary courage and compassion 2 decades after London's deadliest terror attack. Sir Keir Starmer is facing a fresh backbench revolt over controversial plans to overhaul special needs education, scrapping the system which ensures pupils with special needs such as autism and ADHD get personalised support whilst at school. And President Donald Trump is threatening extra tariffs, saying any nation aligning with the economic agenda of the BRICS alliance will face an additional 10% tariff with no exceptions. Erin Patterson has been found guilty in Australia of serving a toxic death cap mushroom in a home-cooked beef Wellington that killed 3 members of her family. And at least 78 people have died and dozens more still missing after flash floods swept through central Texas. Local Governor Greg Abbott says authorities will stop at nothing to find those still missing. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev on this slightly dark, rainy Monday morning. But we hope you had a lovely weekend.
Well, it's exactly 20 years today since those 7/7 London bombings where 52 people died, more than 700 were injured, many of them with life-changing injuries. 4 suicide bombers detonated bombs on the London Underground and on a double-decker bus. And forget the double-decker bus was right outside the British Medical Association offices. There was a conference going on and doctors poured out of the building to help. I was in the south of France waiting for a plane to come back from a holiday, and the word was, because you couldn't ring into London. The mobile
network was down.
And the idea was it was a grid failure, and I absolutely know every instinct of my body said it's a bomb, but I thought 1. Who'd have thought 4?
What is remarkable, I know obviously we had the terror attack in Manchester Arena with Ariana Grande concert, but it's amazing that we've got to 20 years, touch wood, without something similar happening in any of our big cities in such a dramatic
We've had some lone wolves, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ariana Grande was a shocker, 23 people.
But I think that says so much about our intelligence services and how much work must be going on behind the scenes every day to avert potential terror activities. And we're very grateful for those people.
Yeah, and you think how much easier it is now for these young men in particular to be radicalised. They can do it on the phone now.
Of course, it's remarkable.
We shouldn't forget the 4 killers, the most shocking part of the suicide bombers they were all homegrown. They were all born here.
I'd forgotten.
And had nursed some terrible grudge against this country with its democracy and its free speech. Yeah, all 4 of them were homegrown. I think the leader of the gang was from Yorkshire.
Yeah, that's right. And if you have memories of this day 20 years ago, because 20 years is a very significant event, I think, just get in touch this morning and let us know, gbnews.com/Your Say. Were you there in London that morning? We'd love to hear your stories. And do you feel safe now? Do you feel safer now on the streets of London than maybe you did 20 years ago?
And if you remember the extraordinary juxtaposition, the day before we learnt that Britain had won the bid for the Olympic Games in 2012.
Yes,
so that extraordinary juxtaposition, the joy, people were so happy. And on the very morning, the next day, Sir Ian Blair, I think, was the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, was on the BBC radio talking about how the Olympics would pose a risk to security, but how the police would be up to it. And even as he was speaking, those terrible monsters were on their way to plant living hell in London.
Amazing.
Amazing, wasn't it?
King Charles has released a message of unity, asking people to stand united against those who would seek to divide us. Is Britain safer now, do you think, in your opinion, than it was back in 2005?
I tell you what, if you're a Jewish man or woman, you wouldn't think so, because they have to avoid city centres like London because of those pro-Palestine marches.
Let's speak now to former British Transport Police Officer Gary Hayes, who joins us this morning. Good morning, Gary. Thank you so much for joining us. Commiserations to you as well, and your sympathies on this day. I imagine it's incredibly poignant every time 7/7 comes around for you. Just tell our viewers and our listeners what you were doing that day, Gary.
Yeah, good morning, thank you. Well, on that day I was actually on paternity leave. My wife had just had our third son. However, I was informed of the ensuing dramas that were taking place. I came back into work the following day and was basically put onto or became part of the resilience team at the temporary mortuary at the HAC to help identify the 52 victims and clearly what was left of the bombers.
And that was a gruesome exercise, Gary, wasn't it? The like of which, as a police officer, you probably never prepare for something of that magnitude. Working in the transport police, you will have seen awful accidents on motorways. But give us an idea of the scale of the task that you were faced with that day.
It was horrific. I mean, unfortunately, the victims have been down in the tunnels and on the crime scenes for a few days. If you remember, it was very, very hot, so decomposition was a huge factor when the deceased were being delivered to us, and clearly the blast injuries. It was something that, quite clearly, as you just said, I wasn't prepared for, and it's left a lasting legacy with me.
Yeah, and you have PTSD from this, Gary, don't you? You've talked about having post-traumatic stress. Just because it is important on days like today that we recognise the work of our emergency services and our first responders and the toll that it takes on you. What has that been like for you, and how does it manifest itself?
For me, as soon as I finished the tour of duty at the HAC, it was just straight back to normal duties. There was no decompression, and obviously the work that we'd undertaken during that period of time had really sort of burnt its picture into my memory. Over the years, I just started to slip down a very dark hole. I was a proud man, too proud to ask for any help, didn't really understand what was going on, but we dress PTSD up as a sign of weakness, and we shouldn't. You know, every officer from that day to this day suffers a daily occurrence of trauma, and I would actively encourage officers to talk to someone, to talk to my charity, PTSD 999. That's what we're here for. That's the whole reason we set this up, because I had no help, and it almost took my life. So with that in mind, it's just, you know, something that we should encourage our emergency services to talk about and encourage their officers to speak, especially after they've been to a traumatic event.
Gary, you said there it almost took your life. Did you actually contemplate taking your own life? Were the nightmares too much?
Yes, it just became overwhelming. I was drinking, I become very short-tempered, for want of a better word, and my tolerance to the public there was nothing there. I would turn up at jobs and, you know, basically I just couldn't deal with certain situations. I would just have this huge outburst of anger, and it's, you know, all back really to 20 years ago and what we did. You know, I'm not ashamed to admit that now, whereas before, you know, everyone builds this picture of you as this strong individual, as a leader and everything else. But it crucified me, you know, to the point where I lost my job.
Oh, did you?
And, you know.
If you'd had therapy, Gary, early on, do you think that would have made a difference?
I think if generically there'd been something in place to help officers understand the signs and symptoms around PTSD and the connotations of what it can do, and just encourage, especially the guys, because we're the worst. We don't talk about our emotions. You know, for the ladies, you know, they can often, dare we say, just lean across the fence, but equally, there are women that can't talk, just like the guys. And statistically, we are the worst. So, you know, if there was something in place that, you know, the emergency services could use as a tool, we give an awareness presentation highlighting the signs and symptoms and the long-term effects of PTSD. You know, let's engage, let's help our officers now. It's 20 years is too late. It's like any big anniversary. We always talk about that sad event and then knock-on effects, but we're still not doing enough to help our officers, and that's the whole reason PTSD 999's here, to help the officers and their families get through some dreadful times.
Let's think about it in a slightly today. Let's look for some optimism here, Gary, because we were reflecting on the fact that it is remarkable that we've got to 20 years after this event in one of the busiest cities in the world. and we haven't seen something similar. I don't even want to tempt fate by saying that, but that has to be testimony, doesn't it, to our intelligence services who are working behind the scenes to avert any attack.
Absolutely. Our security services, our emergency services, they are the best in the world, there is no doubt. Every day is a challenging day within that environment because they're deterring crimes that you and I will never ever get to hear about, preventing these sort of atrocities. 20 years ago, this terrible incident took place and it changed, from my humble point of view, the style of policing, especially on the rail network. It basically opened up a whole new set of scenarios for us as emergency services and as security services to deal with. And thankfully, everyone's remained professional and they've been on the game.
Do you think, Gary, do you feel we're safer now and better prepared than we were 20 years ago?
I would like to say yes, but clearly with the way that acts of terrorism take place nowadays, there is no defined way of identifying that something's going to happen. The security services are aware of incidents, I'm sure, and the possibilities of events, and they're on it and they're preventing these things from happening. But sadly, people get through the net and atrocities take place. But thankfully, in the last 20 years, I know in recent years we've had the London bombings and the Manchester Arena events. But I guess in the long term, it's been, everyone's been on top of it and clearly saved many, many lives.
All right, Gary, thanks for joining us. That's former British Transport Police Officer Gary Hayes. Thank you, and go well, Gary, and thanks for all you did then, and thanks for all you've done for us subsequently. Thank you for that. The trauma and the mental must still be reverberating for so many people.
Yeah. And
then what he must have seen in that morgue. Dante's Inferno.
I know, and he had several days, apparently,
sort
of sifting through remains of that event.
Charred bodies.
In order to
and it was
people.
hot, and it was extraordinary. I can still remember on the day of it, the quiet dignity of people walking home from work.
Yeah.
There were no repercussions. There was nobody chanting death to Muslims or death to terrorists. They just got on with it. Ken Livingstone, who was the mayor at the time, he played a blinder, actually.
Did he?
He really did. Sadly, we won't hear from him because he's got dementia now, but he was very cool and calm and spoke with real leadership, and people looked to him. He was, and Blair, of course, was a great communicator, as you know, and articulated the right words. He was up in Scotland. There was a major summit going on of some description, G7 or G something, and of course he came straight back to London.
Because I think I was in Manchester on this day and I had a one-year-old babysitter and I wasn't in town. But I remember the gut instinct is, where's my sister?
Yeah.
Where's my friends? And that's the thing because almost everybody knows somebody that works or lives in London, don't they? So when you have an event like that, you're constantly ringing, you're checking, where is everybody?
My mum's phone never stopped ringing, people saying, is Andrew okay?
I'm sure.
And she was able to say, he's coming back from France today, thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
One of the tubes, because I was on the Times then, was Aldgate. I used to use it every morning.
Yeah, and it is amazing that it doesn't, we live in a safe country. I suppose it's one of the reasons why it's so appealing to people who want to live here. Up next, American President Donald Trump has accused tech billionaire Elon Musk of going, quote, off the rails for launching what he's calling the America Party. Is it going to split the Republican vote?
But first, if you want some of that holiday sun, you could do some. Look at the rain outside. Here's the forecast for some of our top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
The heat wave across Europe is increasingly becoming confined to eastern areas of the country. Temperatures here could locally still be 5-10 degrees above normal for the year. On the edge of that heat, though, there are some heavy thunderstorms breaking out for the Balkans and over the Alps. Generally further towards the west, though, temperatures now easing back towards average, but northerly winds bringing a touch of cloud to parts of Iberia, as well as Madeira and Tenerife. Generally, though, for many areas over the next few days, there will be a lot of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
In
the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Yeah, so I got the news on 4th of April, right in between GB Team Selection Series, which hurt even more because I was leading in the points. But all of a sudden, I get a phone call being told you're banned from attending any part of UK premises, banned from speaking with your teammates or staff, which was the most brutal part of it, and suspended, or whatever word you want to use.
I think, though, Kurt, that, posting subscription-only saucy content online might get you in a little bit of trouble, or did it not cross your mind?
No, for sure. But I want to make it clear that I have tried things in the past. I've been living life on the edge so many years. We moved from Latvia in 2010, been living life on the edge since then, done everything from working freelance long into the long nights, working at the Amazon warehouse. I have seeked out other alternatives, but in December last year, I got to a point of realization where I thought, is it worth it, or can I find an alternative? And I knew of other GB athletes doing it. I didn't think it was going to cause outrage like this.
Yeah, because I was thinking, a nice chap like you, who's obviously very talented with your sport, you could make some money doing, like online fitness training or personal training and things like that don't involve, getting your kit off.
No, for sure. I've been making content for like 6-7 years now. Over 1,000 of the pieces of content have been inspirational, motivational. I've visited over 30 schools in the UK, going to the hardest parts of the UK, inspiring kids from underprivileged backgrounds to get into sport. I've tried that, but I don't know. I found that in this day and age, unless you are smart or find some little controversial thing you can hold on to, it's going to be hard to get attention and sponsorship.
GB News, the People's Channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
9:51. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew and Bev.
So it never stops, does it, in America? Elon Musk, you remember he was Donald Trump's biggest buddy, biggest ally in the run-up to a presidential election? Well, he's launching a new political party which will compete, of course, with the Republican Party.
So this is only a matter of weeks after he had that dramatic falling out with President Trump. Trump has now said the world's richest man has gone completely off the rails.
So let's talk to US political commentator Jennifer Powers. Jennifer, good morning to you. What do we make of this? Is this a rich man who should know better? What is the American Party going to be that the Republican Party isn't?
Good morning. Yeah, it's... I think Ross... excuse me. I'm thinking of Ross Perot in my head, which isn't helpful. I think Elon Musk is going to struggle with this new political party for 3 big reasons. First, the American system, which is very much a two-party state. Secondly, the personality of Elon Musk, which, as we know, is Marmite. And thirdly, the policies that this party is espousing may seem very sensible, but they're not necessarily policies that the voters will back.
And he's being quite specific, isn't he, Jennifer, about the aim of the party. He's realistic that he's not going to win a majority in any sort of election, but he wants to go for 2 or 3 Senate seats and 8 to 10 House districts. How realistic is it that he could achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a smart move because, as we know in Britain, it's very hard to take power in a two-party state. So it's very smart of him to focus on a small number of races. And I think he could have 2 ways of two ways to success. The first being that his candidates actually win those specific elections. But secondly, he could really shift the Overton window. He could change the political debate in the US, putting more pressure on both main parties to become more fiscally responsible, because that is really what's driving him to start the new party. It's his disgust, really, with the big, beautiful bill, as Trump calls it, which is going to increase the US deficit by more than $3 trillion, or the debt by more than $3 trillion. So he very much worries about the effect that rising debt load will have on the sustainability, the economy, and ultimately the security of the United States.
Because that's his point, as you say, that's his point of difference, isn't it? He comes at this as a businessman looking to cut costs, reduce spending, and make everything a bit more not profitable, but more tax efficient, I guess. And as somebody that must pay a huge amount of tax, like Elon Musk, must be important to him. Jennifer, we've run out of time. Thank you so much, American political commentator there, Jennifer Powers. Can you imagine, if you paid this much tax as Elon Musk does?
I know.
No wonder you're going.
I know.
Can we do something about this? Can we just, charge less tax, please? Spend more efficiently.
It'll go. No, you think how long it's taken reform to get to where it is? I mean, UKIP has been going for 20-odd years, 25 years.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time.
Right, still to come. Labour revolt brewing over special needs support for children. Don't miss it. First, your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Many of us can look forward to a fine and settled week to come with plentiful amounts of sunshine, all courtesy of this area of high pressure that's going to be building in from the Atlantic. It's not quite reached all areas just yet, so there is this lingering weather front across the far southeast of England with some heavy rain first thing. Also, just a few showers pushing through from North Wales, parts of Merseyside, Cheshire region, and a few showers will also generally linger across North Sea coasts. But elsewhere, the sunshine should break through during today, and it will feel relatively pleasant overall compared to the rather cloudy skies we saw over the weekend. Temperatures generally ranging around mid to high teens across parts of Scotland, but we do have quite a brisk northwesterly wind coming in, so it probably will make it feel a touch cooler than what these values may suggest otherwise. But if you manage to get out of the breeze and in that sunshine, it should be pleasant nonetheless. Temperatures further towards the south likely to climb into the 20 degrees of Celsius, around 23 as your highs for Cardiff and London. We could see a few more heavy showers just skirt the east coast of England during this evening and overnight, but otherwise it should stay largely dry for many areas and quite prolonged clear skies. Underneath those clear skies, though, it could be quite a chilly night for the time of year. Rural areas of Scotland may be down into low single figures. Towns and cities generally managing to hold up just in double digits. But that does mean there'll be plentiful amounts of sunshine to start off Tuesday morning as well. Cloud perhaps building for Northern Ireland and the Outer Hebrides with some outbreaks of rain a little later on in the day, and again some showers just lingering around those eastern coastal areas of England. But with lighter winds in that sunshine inland, it will feel really rather nice. Highs now around 25 degrees Celsius in the south. But those temperatures are going to be climbing even further as we head throughout this week, with all of that sunshine close to 30 degrees Celsius later on. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users should proceed cautiously on the A9 Dornoch Bridge due to high winds. On the M62 eastbound between junctions 22 and 24, a vehicle fire has closed one lane, but traffic is expected to normalise by 12:30. In Stockport, a vehicle breakdown on the M60 clockwise exit at junction 1 has closed one lane, with conditions improving soon. And on the trains, Great Western Railway reports reduced service to Falmouth Docks and disruptions to Gunnislake. Greater Anglia has issues between Witham and Braintree. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10 a.m. on Monday the 7th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
20 years ago today.
It's gone badly wrong. We really don't know at the moment. It's loud bangs.
We need ambulances and water to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. Russell Square is a priority. We're going to have it as a major incident, so we'll get ambulances to you wherever.
It's the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings. 4 suicide bombers killed 52 people and injured more than 700 in the country's capital. Does Britain feel safer today?
Well, shortly, bereaved families, survivors, members of the emergency services and VIPs will begin gathering here at St Paul's Cathedral for that memorial service, some 2 decades on from those horrific bombings.
Special needs supports. Our minister's about to scrap specialised school care plans, putting vital support for autistic and ADHD pupils on the line. And will this trigger another huge rebellion by Labour MPs?
Turkey Summer faces another battle with backbenchers, this time over state support for disabled children. Is the PM losing control of his own party in Parliament?
And death by mushroom poisoning in Australia. Erin Patterson has been found guilty of triple murder after serving her estranged husband's family poisonous mushrooms tucked into beef Wellington. We'll give you the details.
Tax the wealthy. Is Labour considering a new wealth tax of 2% on assets worth more than £10 million? Would this trigger a fresh exodus of rich, job-creating Brits?
Do we need a policing overhaul? The Met Police boss, Sir Mark Rowley, wants 12 mega forces in England to replace the current system of 43 county forces. Does that sound to you like the kind of reform that would prove more efficient?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience. The electronic line calling system, unfortunately, was unable to track the last point, so we will replay the point.
So Wimbledon apologises after an official mistakenly switched off the AI line judge technology at a crucial moment in the centre court defeat for the last remaining British woman, Sonny Cartal. Thought high-tech was supposed to be better than humans.
Now, We won't be surprised to know that I hate the idea of technology taking over what humans do in the sporting setting, whether it's in football or tennis. And those people who love AI will be making a meal of this today because they'll be saying, well, if it wasn't for that stupid human who switched it off, it would all have worked perfectly. But I don't see it like that.
There's been glitches throughout the Wimbledon tournament, and we know it happens in football too.
Yeah.
So the line judges were part of tradition. What's wrong with tradition?
You didn't have a human switching themselves off. They just did the job. And do you know what? It might not always be perfect, but that is what humanity is it not?
I agree. It's all to save money.
Get in touch with us, gbnews.com/your say. First, though, news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Bev, thank you. Very good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story today, Sir Keir Starmer and Sir Sadiq Khan have both laid wreaths this morning in remembrance of the July 7th bombings. King Charles has called on the nation to remember the extraordinary courage and compassion 2 decades after London's deadliest terror attack. 52 people were killed and hundreds injured when suicide bombers struck 3 tube trains and a bus. A service is being held at St Paul's Cathedral while Prince William will attend a private memorial in Hyde Park. The Prime Minister says those who tried to divide us have only strengthened our resolve. Keir Starmer is facing a fresh backbench revolt over controversial plans to overhaul special needs education. There are reports that ministers are poised to scrap the system which ensures pupils with special needs such as autism and ADHD get personalised support at school, currently costing the taxpayer £12 billion a year. Senior party figures warn the reforms risk becoming the welfare Mark II, as the government faces mounting pressure to balance the books on public finances. Meanwhile, specialist nursery teachers in disadvantaged areas will be offered £4,500 cash incentives to boost early years education. The new scheme, part of the government's Best Start in Life strategy, will also see Ofsted inspect all new providers within 18 months of opening from next April. The Education Secretary says the plan aims to ensure every child gets the foundation they need to succeed, regardless of their background. Minister for Early Years, Stephen Morgan, told GB News that he wants to ensure the system is fit for the future.
I talk to parents all the time, obviously in my own constituency, on visits that I do and those that write to me, and they would agree that the system just isn't working at the moment. And our priority is to get it right at the right place for every child. We've put more money into SEND. We put £1 billion in high needs funding in last year. We've put more money in for what capital, so more places in mainstream settings as well. Our Best Start centres, there will be dedicated professionals in those centres to support children with SEND. So the money's going in, the investment's going in, and we want to deliver the reform to make sure the system is fit for the future.
Looking stateside, President Donald Trump is threatening extra tariffs on countries backing BRICS policies that he sees as anti-American. The US president says any nation aligning with the economic agenda of the BRICS alliance, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, will face an additional 10% tariff, with no exceptions. His post on Truth Social came shortly after BRICS leaders issued a joint statement warning that rising tariffs were threatening global trade. It comes as President Trump's administration is racing to finalise a string of new trade deals before a July 9th tariff deadline. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading back to Washington today to discuss a potential ceasefire for Gaza. A woman has been found guilty in Australia of serving a deadly mushroom lunch that killed 3 members of her family. Erin Patterson was convicted in Morwell, Victoria for murder after prosecutors said she knowingly used toxic death cap mushrooms in a home-cooked beef Wellington that left her in-laws and an aunt gravely ill, all 3 of which later died. The court heard that she lied to the police and tried to cover her tracks by disposing of evidence. Her defence claimed her poisons were a tragic accident, but the jury sided with the prosecutors after one guest, a local pastor, survived but remained seriously unwell. And at least 78 people are dead and dozens more missing after flash floods swept through central Texas. 68 of the victims, among them 28 children, died in Kerr County, where Camp Mystic was inundated on Friday after the river burst its banks. 10 girls and a counsellor are still unaccounted for as the search teams battle on through deep mud and unstable debris. The storms threaten to return within the next 48 hours. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the authorities will stop at nothing to find those still missing. And parents who lose a pregnancy before 24 weeks will soon be entitled to bereavement leave under new government plans. Ministers will amend the Employers' Rights Bill to ensure protected time off after early pregnancy loss, closing a long criticised legal gap. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says the move will give grieving parents space to process their loss, something that's not currently guaranteed in laws unless a stillbirth occurs after 24 weeks. And 29 people were arrested in London on Saturday for defying the ban on supporting Palestine action. The group is now prescribed as a terror organisation, meaning that expressing support for them is a criminal offence. Among the arrested was 83-year-old Reverend Sue Parfitt, who was led away by police officers after protesting in Parliament Square. This comes after the Met Police say there's no age limit on the law, and the support for the group now carries a jail term of up to 14 years. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in just under half an hour, but now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Now, let's see what you've been saying at home. Christine says, I greatly sympathise with parents of children with special needs, but I think they shouldn't be in mainstream schooling at all. Some can be very distracting in class and inhibit learning for other children. They should be in special schools, and this striving to make everyone equal is damaging to all. Well, Christine, they're going to do exactly the opposite of what you're suggesting. They're going to be closing down some... So, this is the suggestion. Rather than having lots of children with learning needs in specialist units, they're going to try and put them into the state system, into the mainstream system.
Yes, right.
And some parents will say, well, I'd rather my child who has a special need can be in the mainstream system, but with a huge amount of extra support. I don't know how that's going to be any cheaper, because employing extra teaching assistants in classrooms is expensive. And as you say, for those kiddies that are very capable and very bright and very driven, that can then inhibit their ability to move on.
And law of unintended consequence, by the decision to shove VAT on private schools, many, many children in those private schools had special needs. The parents were paying extra money so they would get a more specialised education. Yeah. They're now washing around in the state system.
Absolutely. I'm just having a look what everyone's saying here.
This echoes to me like the disability benefit row. Yet again, this will look like they're not trying to do it to improve this education of special needs children. They're doing it to save money, because we've got a £12 billion price tag. Where did that price tag come from? The government.
Here's the thing. If you think if you think the noise and the unhappiness over taking money away from disabled adults was bad, just wait to see what the public will feel like when you take it away from children with learning disabilities.
Yeah, you could almost argue, in a sense, have a disability.
Yeah.
Disabled kids, much more emotive.
Yeah. OK, it is 7/7 today.
It is. 20 years today, I can't believe it really, since those devastating terror attacks on the London transport system.
52 people died in the capital, almost 800 were injured when 4 terrorists detonated bombs on the London Underground and on a double-decker bus.
Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has this very, very moving report.
Something's gone badly wrong. We really don't know at the moment. It's loud bangs.
We need ambulances and water to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. Russell Square is a priority. We're going to have it as a major incident, so we'll get ambulances to you wherever I can. Okay, thanks, mate.
An attack in the heart of our capital city. The London bombings were designed to strike commuters at the height of rush hour. 3 underground trains and a bus were the targets. But as shocking as this mass casualty attack was, it also marked a sinister turn in the threat Britain now faced. The first suicide bombings in this country. So many people here in London and far beyond have stories to tell about the horrors of 7/7. For me, it was quite literally the day Islamist terrorism landed on my doorstep. Around the time of 7/7, I was living in this apartment block. That iconic red double-decker bus blew up just yards further up the road there. And Russell Square, another blast site, is just across the road. It was a Piccadilly line train between King's Cross and Russell Square which saw the greatest loss of life. 26 died here.
Unsupervised at Aldgate, we've just had a big explosion. There appears to be something ahead of the train in the track.
There may be fatalities. We don't know anything about that.
Another 7 were killed near Aldgate Station in East London. 6 died at Edgware Road Station in West London. and 13 lost their lives when a double-decker bus was blown up at Tavistock Square, just yards from the site of the blast at Russell Square. Russell Square was my local tube station. On 7/7, I was fortunate to be on a day off. Otherwise, around the time of the bombing, I'd have been right here trying to catch a westbound Piccadilly line train. So many of us feel fortunate that fate intervened that day. But as well as the 52 who died, almost 800 were injured, and thousands of others will never forget what they saw. I ended up reporting live from the roof of my apartment building as the full horror of those events unfolded.
Looking down onto Russell Square, high up on a rooftop here, looking down onto Russell Square tube station at the moment. There's a row of about 20 ambulances immediately outside the tube station. Also, fire rescue vehicles, firefighters are down in Russell Square tube station itself. There are numerous, what are obviously doctors in these familiar orange boiler suits as well, either going down into the tunnel or emerging with casualties.
Those were murderous attacks on London, on our city, that affected so many people so deeply. I think it's really important 20 years on that our focus is on all of those people affected. The other thing my mind turns to are the emergency services and others who stepped forward on that day, and they and the families and the victims. What strikes me is how they're still carrying the effects of that day through to today and for the rest of their lives.
As well as the first suicide bombings, 7/7 marked the advent for the UK of more sophisticated terror cells aimed at causing so-called spectacular attacks. 2 decades on, the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officer says the threat picture has mostly moved away from the more sophisticated plots to an era of lone wolf attacks, individuals still willing to die for their twisted ideology and still looking to cause maximum harm.
So we still see the Islamist threat as our main threat here in the United Kingdom. And with an ever-increasing and unstable world as well, we do see terrorist groups overseas beginning to have an influence on terrorism threats in near Europe and of course here in the UK. So Islamist remains our main threat. And I think the online environment, the world environment, adds a whole new layer of challenge to the threat that we face.
I know it sounds a bit like a cliche, but I honestly can't believe that 20 years have passed since the horrors of the London bombings, a day when the 52 innocent lives represented here were so murderously cut short, and the lives of so many others forever changed. Mark White, GB News at the 7/7 Memorial.
And Mark White joins us now. Mark, good morning to you. I didn't realise until watching that, actually, of what a lucky escape you had had, a sliding doors moment of there, but for the grace of God. How relevant is this day to you? How poignant does it still feel 20 years on? You were literally in that area.
You know, I think it's just that point that I made towards the end of the piece. I just cannot believe that 2 decades have passed. It really just seems like a few short years ago. And looking back at the pictures, you know, all the emergency service vehicles, they look the same. It's not like looking back at archive material from 40 years ago or so where things look so very different. It doesn't feel that long ago, but yet when I go through the newsroom at GB News and I speak to people, there's blank expressions. It's, yeah, I think I remember that. I was 5 years old at the time, so clearly, you know, it was a long time ago, but it resonates for me, and it resonates for people of my age group and even a bit younger who were in and about London at that time, and would, of course, London is a commuting city. You need to use the likes of the Underground and the buses to get about anywhere effectively, and so many people, of course, were on the transport system at that time. That's what these attacks were intended to do. They were intended to go after the lifeblood of London, those people who use that transportation system en masse at that time of a day, and to cause as many casualties as possible. And we know, of course, in addition to the 52 people who lost their lives, that almost 800 others were injured, some of them very badly injured that day.
So, talking earlier, it was extraordinary juxtaposition, wasn't it? The day before, there'd been such unbridled joy in the capital because London got the go-ahead for the 2012 Olympics, and then the very next day, that crashing, terrible, shocking series of terrorist explosions.
Yeah, I'd worked 12 days in a row, so actually 7/7 was my day off. Which I was looking forward to, and celebrated with everybody else the night before, and actually slept through the blast, even though the bus bomb was right outside my flat. My bedroom was on the other side, and sadly I was so hungover that I didn't actually hear anything. When I did eventually wake, obviously, I was right in the midst of this unfolding tragedy. I tried to get in as close as possible, but the police were there with the cordons, and actually I found the most effective thing to do was to go back into my apartment, up onto the roof, and just really documented what I was seeing, which was horrific. All of those very severely injured people being taken out of Russell Square tube station by the paramedics and doctors.
Mark, Islamist attacks still dominate the work of counter-terrorism officials in the UK, but we've got the statement from Yvette Cooper again saying Islamist terrorism, but also right-wing terrorists, far-right terrorists are also a threat. Do you think that's the appropriate statement to make on a day like today?
I'm so glad that you raised that point, because when I saw that statement as well, I raised an eyebrow because, the Islamist threat is 75% of the caseload for MI5. The far-right threat is 25%. Yes, there's a threat there, but it is nothing as compared to the Islamists. So having to shoehorn the fact that the far-right threat is a dominant threat in there as well, I don't know why she actually needed to do that, because clearly there is a far-right threat and it's growing, but many people might say it's growing because of the Islamist attacks that we saw year after year after year that took us right through the period, of course, of not just Al-Qaeda, but then the next terrorist threat, which was ISIS. So, yeah, there is a threat, but let's not forget, this attack on 7/7 was an Islamist attack, the first suicide bombings in the UK, and it's that we're here to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. Mark White there, on the 20th anniversary of the 7/7.
And Mark is outside St Paul's Cathedral and will be there for us for that service of remembrance being led for the nation by the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward and Sophie Wessex. Curiously, not the King, because apparently the convention in the royal family is that a monarch attends a 25th anniversary commemoration, not a 20th. Conventions, Your Majesty, are there to be broken.
Up next, the British teenager Marcus Fakana. You might remember this story. He was jailed in Dubai for having a consensual sex with a 17-year-old British girl. I think she was British. He has been released and he's back in the UK. The age of consent in the UAE is 18. We'll be discussing that. We're going to have the latest. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good
of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Yeah, so I got the news on 4th of April, right in between GB Team Selection Series, which hurt even more because I was leading in the points. But all of a sudden, I get a phone call being told you're banned from attending any Pal UK premises, banned from speaking with your teammates or staff, which was the most brutal part of it, and suspended, or whatever word you want to use.
I think, though, Kurt, that, posting subscription-only saucy content online might get you in a little bit of trouble, or did it not cross your mind?
No, for sure. But I want to make it clear that I have tried things in the past. I've been living life on the edge so many years. We moved from Latvia in 2010, been living life on the edge since then, done everything from working freelance long into the long nights, working at the Amazon warehouse. I have seeked out other alternatives, but in December last year, I got to a point, a realization where I thought, is it worth it, or can I find an alternative? And I knew of other GB athletes doing it. I didn't think it was going to cause outrage like this.
Yeah, because I was thinking, a nice chap like you, who's obviously very talented with your sport, you could make some money doing, like online fitness training or personal training and things like that don't involve, getting your kit off.
No, for sure. I've been making content for like 6-7 years now. Over 1,000 of the pieces of content have been inspirational, motivational. I've visited over 30 schools in the UK, going to the hardest parts of the UK, inspiring kids from underprivileged backgrounds to get into sport. I've tried that, but I don't know. I found that in this day and age, unless you are smart or find some little controversial thing you can hold on to, it's going to be hard to get attention and sponsorship.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. A bit noisy in the studio. Matthew Sorbet and Alex Armstrong. We're going to go through those in just a minute. First of all, let's see how you could win £54,321. Here's the details.
You have the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just the chance to sit back, relax, and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? £54,321 in tax-free cash has to be won. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Now, we are joined, as I just mentioned, with Alex Armstrong and Matthew Sorbet in the studio. Shall we talk, gentlemen, good morning to you both, about Labour willing to explore a wealth tax? Matthew, right or wrong?
Yeah, wrong. It's short-termism. I get they've got to find the money, and part of that short-termism, I just don't think it will work. I think you need to start looking at land reform tax, or you could put a percentage on corporation tax, or something that if you want to bring in short term, isn't potentially going to drive people away.
Because you think it would drive people away, wealth tax?
I think we've seen certainly that it can do. I think the majority of people that have gone are non-dom types who I think we've discussed before that I think those that have the money don't necessarily earn and pay tax on that money. And I think it's the earners and the banker types that you want to keep. The non-doms that just have wealth, you know, they can go.
But even on non-doms, Matthew, we think she's changing a bit the non-dom tax because of that figure. Every 45 minutes, a millionaire leaves the country.
Yeah, I think you need to be looking at it. They're worried about upsetting voter bases and sort of middle-class types.
They haven't seemed to worry in the last 11 months.
Yeah, well, no, that's
11
true. That's what happens when you have apparently a very broad but shallow voter base. But no, I think even things like, it'd be deeply unpopular, but the fact that council tax is based on housing prices from when I was literally born in 1991 is ridiculous, really.
And that's got to go up every year because that was part of the spending review. They didn't spell it out, but it has to go up minimum of 5% in every borough, county, every year. That's a big hike for people.
But that's the thing, but you need something that's built to last, which will be a proper policy, not just a one-off wealth tax. They can be useful. I think we saw Tony Blair, and I don't know if Margaret Thatcher did use like a windfall tax. That's the sort of stuff you might use. Why don't we use that on Thames Water bosses' bonuses?
People
that would be popular. Exactly, that's
really
what I'd be looking at.
Alex, the thing about this sort of tax, like Matt says, it just sounds like it's punishment. It just sounds like it is, we are just going to hammer the rich because we don't like them. It doesn't speak of a plan, does it?
Yeah, well, I think this is... I mean, if you're looking through the papers over the last few days, you'll see the common trend, which is different Labour sources or politicians all pitching ideas on how to save the economy, how to save the British economy, because Rachel Reeves's plan has been completely thwarted because the government is so weak. They've been defeated in that massive welfare reform that they couldn't get through. That has trapped the Chancellor, and that means now someone's going to have to pay for that. So this is the difficulty. They've made all these promises. The Chancellor wants to stick to these fiscal rules, which is fair enough. But what happens then? You have to tax people. Have to.
Yeah, and she said, didn't she, Matthew, not only when we had the budget, no more, and then she said at CPI in November, I'm not coming back for any more taxes at the weekend. She didn't say that.
I think it's hard to say as well when you can't predict potential global affairs which could affect you. I always think it's very bad to... I think you've got to reassure people and say, you know, within the realms of possibility.
She can't reassure anybody about anything because people don't trust and they don't like her.
Yeah, possibly. I think even amongst the PLP, she's the one where the unpopularity is at her door, not necessarily Keir's, and certainly the U-turns and the winter fuel and policies that are seemingly made on the hoof rather than being properly thought through are definitely blamed at her from the PLP than Starmer, actually.
Well, it actually is Starmer. He's the one who's actually causing all of the chaos, isn't he? Because he's using her as a bit of a human shield. He's the one saying, let's change the policy here because I've got this rebellion. She's trying to stick to a plan. He's caving into his backbenchers.
We just talked, because I was at Henry Regatta on Thursday when we'd seen the footage of her at PMQs of Rachel Reeves while we're talking about her crying, clearly distressed about something. What did you make of her next day recovery, smiling semi-sociopathically as though everything was absolutely fine? I thought it was the most bizarre statement.
We live in a different time from maybe the 90s where you go out the next day and put a brave face on it and you reassure the markets. I think the world is very different, and whether we like it or not, and I don't like the idea that you can't have a private life in politics because we're all entitled to one to an extent, but I think, unfortunately, you've got to shed some light on the private issue. Now, you know, I don't know what it is, and it wouldn't be fair to speculate, but I think it raises further questions of what that is. And we live in a world where, you know, people are inquisitive and people like salacious gossip as well. Let's have it right. People have always loved that sort of stuff. And I think I get why they've done it, and it's to reassure everybody she's not getting sacked, it's all right, you know, it's just something in her life, but I think she's going to have to be a little bit more forthcoming on it.
What we're looking for is
authenticity, she should in a way,
aren't
but...
we? What we're looking for is truth. Authenticity.
Honestly, there was various events last week where I spoke to MPs, Labour ministers. Honestly, they were sceptical. We have no idea what it is.
You mean not sceptical about there being a personal issue, but it was much more about her job?
There was a miraculous transformation next, whatever this personal issue wasn't so pressing on her that she was able to reappear. She clearly spent 20 hours in the makeup room to get rid of those huge bags on her. Whatever the issue, my own view is she's just not able to cope with the stress and strains of not being very good at the job.
Don't get me wrong. We all have bad days at work.
Yeah,
a bad week.
She had a bad year. And the country's had a
and
worse
you know what
one,
it's
thanks to
like?
her.
There's this idea of Lindsay Hoyle's had a little dig on the way in about a tweet that Quincy
Minor.
She's the problem is it's just a bit like an AI, isn't it? It's just a bit like robotic, almost like a different version of Rachel Reeves is rolled out. And you know, you would need to go out the next day because someone was doing the maths on how much every tier was costing the country. I mean, it was that's the kind of stuff you cannot do in the second most important job.
The bond markets didn't like what they saw, and so the cost of government borrowing goes
well, they
up.
tried to spin it. They
Money.
tried to spin it, and I don't know if you're about to there, Matthew.
No, I'm not going to spin it. What I'm going to say
people were saying, oh, they, you know, it was because the gilt yield was going up because they wanted to save Rachel Reeves.
No,
it wasn't all that. It was because they saw her in tears.
It wasn't necessarily because she was in tears. I think she was in tears, and then Keir didn't say, oh, yes, she will be chancellor. So I think if I was the bond market, I'd be putting two and two together going, she's getting sacked.
I didn't notice she was distressed, apparently.
We've got to move on as well. Alex, Matthew, thank you so much. Sophia Hill is waiting very patiently for her 60-second news update.
Very good morning. The headlines just after 10:30. Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan have both laid wreaths this morning in remembrance of the July 7th bombings. King Charles has called on the nation to remember the extraordinary courage and compassion 2 decades after London's deadliest terror attack. Sir Keir Starmer is facing a fresh backbench revolt over controversial plans to overhaul special needs education, scrapping the system which ensures pupils with special needs such as autism and ADHD get personalised support at school. President Donald Trump is threatening extra tariffs, saying any nation aligning with the economic agenda of the BRICS alliance will face an additional 10% tariff, with no exceptions. Erin Patterson has been found guilty in Australia of serving a toxic death cap mushroom in a home-cooked beef Wellington that killed 3 members of her family. And the annual festival of San Fermin kicks off today with the first running of the bulls. Hundreds dressed in the traditional white outfit with red neckerchiefs sprinted ahead of the powerful animals along the 875-metre route, with just 6 taken to hospital. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up next, we have the details on the remarkable case of death by mushroom. Down under, Erin Patterson killed 3 members of her own family with poisoned, home-cooked beef Wellington. An extraordinary story. She's been found guilty. We'll give you all the latest on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Many of us can look forward to a fine and settled week to come with plentiful amounts of sunshine, all courtesy of this area of high pressure that's going to be building in from the Atlantic. It's not quite reached all areas just yet, so there is this lingering weather front across the far southeast of England with some heavy rain first thing. Also, just a few showers pushing through from North Wales, parts of Merseyside, Cheshire region, and a few showers will also generally linger across North Sea coasts. But elsewhere, the sunshine should break through during today, and it will feel relatively pleasant overall compared to the rather cloudy skies we saw over the weekend. Temperatures generally ranging around mid to high teens across parts of Scotland, but we do have quite a brisk northwesterly wind coming in, so it probably will make it feel a touch cooler than what these values may suggest otherwise. But if you manage to get out of the breeze and in that sunshine, it should be pleasant nonetheless. Temperatures further towards the south likely to climb into the 20 degrees of Celsius, around 23 as your highs for Cardiff and London. We could see a few more heavy showers just skirt the east coast of England during this evening and overnight, but otherwise it should stay largely dry for many areas and quite prolonged clear skies. Underneath those clear skies, though, it could be quite a chilly night for the time of year. Rural areas of Scotland may be down into low single figures. Towns and cities generally managing to hold up just in double digits. But that does mean there'll be plentiful amounts of sunshine to start off Tuesday morning as well. Cloud perhaps building for Northern Ireland and the Outer Hebrides with some outbreaks of rain a little later on in the day, and again some showers just lingering around those eastern coastal areas of England. But with lighter winds in that sunshine inland, it will feel really rather nice. Highs now around 25 degrees Celsius in the south. But those temperatures are going to be climbing even further as we head throughout this week, with all of that sunshine close to 30 degrees Celsius later on. Bye-bye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M4 eastbound, roadworks between Junction 28 at Tredegar Park and Junction 24 at Caldra led to a closure with diversions. Drivers should use caution on the A737 northbound at Linklive Interchange due to a broken down vehicle causing congestion. In Trafford, the M56 eastbound exit slip at Junction 6 is down to one lane due to a breakdown. Delays of 30 minutes are noted on the A43 southbound between the A421 and the junction with the M40 due to congestion. And on the trains, Great Western Railway reports a reduced service to and from Falmouth Docks. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. We're going to be talking to Christopher Hope in just a moment about events here, but over in Australia,
Amazing story.
An Australian mother has been found guilty of murdering 3 relatives and attempting to murder a 4th with a fatal lunch almost 2 years ago.
All 4 guests fell ill after eating a meal of beef Wellington, mashed potatoes and green beans at Erin Patterson's homes in southern Australia. The trial heard those in attendance were diagnosed with a mushroom poisoning caused by eating poisonous death cap mushrooms.
Let's go now live to the house where the crime took place and speak to crime reporter at 9 News Melbourne, Gillian Lantouris. Gillian, good morning. Thank you very much, or good evening to you there in Australia. So, to the British audience, Gillian, if you don't mind, give us a quick summary of what this case was about and how she was caught.
Absolutely. This is an incredible case, really. So it was 2 years ago, nearly to the day, where Erin Patterson, she was at this home behind me here in Leongatha, which is in a country town of Victoria, Australia. And that is when she got her in-laws as well as her ex-husband's parents to all be here, basically, to have a lunch. She lured them here under the guise that she had a cancer diagnosis, but that in court actually turned out not to be true. So she lured them here, she had this lunch, and that is when she served them that beef Wellington dish. In the end, over the next couple of days, the 4 guests at the home, they started getting very ill, and they were all taken to hospital, and sadly 3 of them died and 1 was in critical care, having to have a liver transplant. So of course suspicions were raised. Why did 3 guests die from just a lunch at this person's home? So in the end, police took their time investigating this here in Victoria. It took about a couple of months for them to actually raid her home and finally arrest her. But basically, after 2 years of waiting, we finally got a verdict, and that verdict is she is guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. So Erin Patterson is a triple murderer.
Gillian, what was her motive?
Well, that's the thing. We still don't really know. And our homicide squad detectives here, they have been looking for that, but they've never found the answer. We do know that from what we heard in court that her and her ex-husband, Simon Patterson, they were going through a rough patch, obviously. They had a divorce. There were issues with their children. And also Simon, her husband, had been a part of the Currumborough Baptist Church, quite strongly part of that. And so she was kind of forced into that lifestyle, but then she ended up leaving the church and there were some discrepancies and issues there. So the short answer really is there was no motive that's been revealed other than she was disgruntled with her ex-husband's family.
And there was no sense that she would have benefited from a will or any sort of inheritance from the family?
No, that's the thing. There was nothing to really gain from it other than them not being around. So that's what the bizarre thing is. But, you know, she went to great lengths to cover this crime up. She disposed of a food dehydrator, which was used to dehydrate the mushrooms that were used in that beef Wellington. Police have the evidence of her dumping that at a local clip here. And she also, there was evidence in text messages with her friends that she was really unhappy with Simon Patterson's family. But again, there wasn't much to gain from these murders. So that is a question we're all still asking. But
what about these mushrooms, Gillian? Where do these lethal mushrooms grow, and how well known is it that they could be so lethal?
Well, here in Victoria, they grow quite commonly around. I mean, you have to go to specific spots, but she went on a website and spoke to other mushroom enthusiasts, and they kind of pointed her into the direction of where she could find them nearby. And police said they had her phone pinging in the area where those death cap mushrooms could be found. But here in Victoria, as I said, we do have to give out quite common warnings because people do go foraging. It is quite common in our climate to find mushrooms. So yes, it's not uncommon, and that's where she found them.
She was a spectacularly stupid murderer, Gillian, it seems, because didn't she also serve the food on plates, grey plates, and made sure that she had a terracotta colour plate? And that was what did for her when the witness who survived said, well, hang on a minute, why did she have a different plate?
Absolutely. Very early on, this trial has gone on for 11 weeks, mind you, but early on we did hear that each plate of food was different. So the 4 who fell victim to the death cap mushrooms were different coloured, different sized plates compared to what she had. And also she did say that she gave her children leftovers but had scraped off the mushrooms because they don't like mushrooms. So they did eat the beef Wellington according to her, but without those death cap mushrooms inside.
What do you project? We're going to let you go, Jim, but what is likely do you think the sentence will be?
It's incredibly difficult to tell. In Victoria, we have a life sentence of 25 years to life, but mainly 25 years. But there has to be a few periods of court cases first. So we hear victim impact statements, as well as her defence team has a chance to basically argue why she shouldn't be given that maximum sentence. So we'll just have to wait and see in the coming couple of months until we get that answer.
OK, thank you so much for joining us on GB News. That is 9 News Melbourne reporter Gillian Lantouris.
What an evil woman. It's like something out of a fairy tale, the Grimm Brothers fairy tale.
Here with us in the studio. Well, it's an Agatha Christie. I mean, somebody will be making a movie.
There'll be a drama out of that, for sure.
But she was terrible. Right, Christopher, let's talk about this potential rebellion, another one possibly from the backbenches of this Labour government.
That's right. Not just yet. It'll be in the autumn, but it's a hangover from last week's defeat, or not defeat, but watering down, and the change of an entire legislation bill from removing the words PIP, Personal Independent Payment Reform, from the actual bill. It's now called Universal Credit Bill because it's been watered down completely by this government in the face of these rebellious Labour MPs. The new one is about what's called for SEND, Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. There are around 639,000 children with plans attached because they are SEND children, 100,000 in private schools.
They've got autism, ADHD, those sort of issues.
Yes, well, 3/4 of them have autism, speech and language difficulties, social, emotional and mental health needs, ADHD. 3/4. A quarter are severe learning and physical needs. They are people who have physical disabilities, which are clear to us all. The other 3/4 have more mental issues. That number has doubled since 2018, 11% up since January. It's hoovering up a lot of the bill, the £12 billion bill a year spent on children in need.
It's huge. And just so people don't understand this educational healthcare plan, if you have a child with these needs, you have to go to your local authority.
Yes.
You go and get to experts.
You go to a tribunal.
It's what used to be called statemented. It used to be called having a statement. And they want to change that system.
They want to review it, and there's no plans to cut it back. That's where we are. But whenever this government reviews things with no plans to do something, people get cross, and lots of Labour MPs are fired up about it. They're emboldened by the rebellious behaviour last week, and it may be the big rebellion for this autumn.
And 3 times yesterday, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, refused to rule out that this scheme was going to be scrapped.
Yeah, she said no plans. We'll strengthen and put in better support. No plans to abolish, send the tribunals, because the tribunals are the way you get these legally enforceable plans. The parents who need them are absolutely desperate, but the problem the government's got is
existing plans, or is it to stop new plans?
That's not clear yet, because the review's looking at that.
Such a mess. Yes.
Because it goes back to the original issues. We spent £500 billion on COVID support and on the energy shock. And the result of that is spending cuts in the back end of this decade. That is the adult thing to say about it.
Yep.
But the choices being made by this government are where we're wrong about.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. Still to come this morning, people are gathering at St Paul's Cathedral for an emotional memorial marking the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings.
This is Britain's Newsroom, GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The heat wave across Europe is increasingly becoming confined to eastern areas of the country. Temperatures here could locally still be 5-10 degrees above normal for the year. On the edge of that heat, though, there are some heavy thunderstorms breaking out for the Balkans and over the Alps. Generally further towards the west, though, temperatures now easing back towards average, but northerly winds bringing a touch of cloud to parts of Iberia, as well as Madeira and Tenerife. Generally, though, for many areas over the next few days, there will be a lot of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So Met Police boss Sir Mark Roder, he's the most senior copper in England and Wales. He says we've got to get rid of 43 police forces and have 12, streamline them and make it more efficient and more cost-effective.
So let's speak now to former Police and Crime Commissioner Festus Akinbisoya. Sorry, Festus. Good morning.
Good morning.
Messing up your surname. You've been on the show loads of times. I should have got it right by now. Right, this sounds to me like the worst solution? Because invariably, if you make bureaucratic entities bigger, they become less, not more efficient. But he must know what he's talking about. So what is he talking about?
Well, I mean, of course, Sir Mark, he's a very experienced police officer. He's one of the most senior leaders in policing in this country. And many of the points that he raised during his media rounds yesterday were actually very sensible. However, this is one that I find very concerning, given the prominence that he has. And I don't think that at a time when policing can barely get the basics right, this is the way to use its resources. If you look at the issue of the lack of focus of operational priorities, if you look at the culture within policing, which is a challenge, if you look at the retention and mental health issues of police officers, how on earth does amalgamating police forces deal with that? It doesn't. I say the police should just focus itself right now on getting the basics right first. Then we can start talking about amalgamating police forces, which I think would be a disaster anyway.
Festus, I quite agree. I think people watching and listening will think, for God's sake, can we just have a Bobby on the beat? If I report something, my house is broken, can a copper come and investigate it? Can they take seriously knife crime and gun crime and people losing their mobile phones? Because the police have almost vanished in our communities. We know they do a great job, and they're brave men and women, and we think about 7/7, how many terror attacks they've foiled. But I'm not blaming them. It's the way they're directed by their bosses, like Sir Mark Rowley.
You know, if I was the Mayor of London, I would be saying to the Mayor Commissioner, look, you know, I hear what you're saying, but right now, we need to just focus our priorities on getting better funding into London. We need to start focusing on dealing with antisocial behaviour and drug dealing in our streets, the high volume crime types. That should be our focus right now, rather than getting involved in what would be no doubt a very, very costly and distracting reorganization of policing. Just to very quickly mention this one. If you remember the NHS, when it used to be what they call the primary care trust arrangement, the PCTs, and that moved from the PCTs to the clinical commissioning groups, or CCG. That reorganization cost an estimated about £2.5 billion. And then when the CCGs were reorganized again to what we now have as the ICB, or the Integrated Care Board, that cost about £500 million.
It's outrageous.
And that is just money, not talking of the anxieties, the chaos, the distraction, and the sheer amount of energy that took. Does policing really need that at the moment, with all the issues that it's facing? I don't think so. And one other area where this amalgamation was tried was in Scotland, and it has been an absolute disaster in Scotland. And I don't think we need that in Britain. Definitely London doesn't need it either.
Thank you, Festus. Festus Akinbusoy there joining us this morning. On Britain's Newsroom, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more to come. We've just got to take a quick weather break.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have some showers moving across the UK today, but through the day it's going to turn drier and brighter for many of us. Sunny spells, particularly in the west, but heavy downpours, particularly in the east, especially as we end the day and go overnight. There will be some thunderstorms here and there. But showers will continue for the afternoon across central and western Scotland, one or two running into North Wales, through the Midlands and eastern England. A lot of cloud in these areas. The best of the sunshine across Wales and the southwest, where it will feel cool, but with temperatures at around 23, 24 Celsius, pleasant enough in any sunny spells. The cool breeze continues through the evening, and that will send some further showers into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland. Brighter skies arriving into northern Scotland as we end the day. But you can see some intense showers starting to develop at this stage through northern England and the east of England. Some thundery downpours, some lightning flashes as well associated with these. And I think they'll blossom into this area of more persistent rain as the evening progresses, running down the eastern side of the country, pushing into East Anglia, for example, by midnight. That then moves through and drier, clearer weather returns to the vast majority. And under those clear skies, it's going to be a cool night. So A lot more comfortable for sleeping, I think, compared with many nights so far this summer. And then we start off with plenty of sunshine Tuesday morning. In fact, it's a beautiful start to the day for many of us, but a brisk wind blows through the east coast and there'll be further showers here for a time. And there'll be some thicker cloud returning to western Scotland and Northern Ireland, along with some outbreaks of rain. In between, long spells of sunshine and feeling warmer. In fact, it's going to warm up further this week with temperatures into the high 20s, low 30s by the weekend.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
It's 11 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of July, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning, thanks for joining us. So 20 years ago today.
It's gone badly wrong. We really don't know at the moment. It's loud bangs.
We need ambulances and water to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. Russell Square is we're going to have it as a major incident, so we'll get ambulances.
The 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings, where 4 suicide bombers killed 52 people and injured more than 700, many with life-changing injuries. We're asking, is Britain any safer today?
Well, just in the last few minutes, bereaved family members, survivors, members of the emergency services, senior politicians and others have begun arriving here at St Paul's Cathedral for that poignant and moving memorial service that will be taking place within the next half an hour here as people gather to remember 2 decades on from those bombings that struck 3 London tube trains and that iconic red double-decker bus in Tavistock Square.
Other news this morning, special needs support could be under threat. Ministers may scrap specialised school care plans, putting vital support for autistic, dyslexic and ADHD pupils on the line. Could it cause another Labour rebellion?
And important breaking news, the British teenager jailed in Dubai for having consensual sex with a 17-year-old girl has finally been released and is back in the UK with his family.
And a shocking Australian story. Erin Patterson has been found guilty of triple murder after serving her estranged husband's family poisonous mushrooms in individual beef Wellingtons.
Is Labour considering a new wealth tax of 2% on assets worth more than £10 million? But would this trigger an even bigger exodus of rich Brits who, of course, create lots of jobs here?
And American President Donald Trump has slammed tech billionaire Elon Musk. He's said he's gone off the rails. He's launched the America Party. Republicans are fearing that it may split the vote on the right. Will this be Mr. Trump on the phone to American Party HQ soon?
That have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
If you're similarly baffled by that, as Andrew Pearce was, that was when he was talking about Iran and Israel and the Middle East and the fighting.
What's that got to do with Elon Musk?
Well, I think it was just our producers being a little bit creative, saying, is that what he's going to be like? Is he going to be that incensed when he's on the phone to the American Party HQ soon? I don't think it's going to bother Donald Trump particularly.
Won't give a hoot. Look, it took 25 years to reform to get to where they are now, led by a very charismatic Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
Elon Musk's popularity has died, Bob.
Yeah, the comparisons are genuine between what's happened here with the political right, because of course we had Reform, then came along Reclaim, now Ben Habib's got his own party, now Rupert Lowe's got his own party. Sometimes these boys who just want a lot of attention and to make some sort of political capital end up fracturing what should be a very united group of people.
Absolutely right.
Right, get in touch.
Yeah, please.
GBNews.com/your say this morning. We'd love to hear from you. First of all, though, Sophia Hill with the news.
Bev, thank you. Very good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Sir Keir Starmer and Sir Sadiq Khan have both laid wreaths this morning in remembrance of the July 7th bombings. King Charles has called on the nation to remember the extraordinary courage and compassion 2 decades after London's deadliest terror attack. 52 people were killed and hundreds injured when suicide bombers struck 3 tube trains and a bus. A service is being held at St Paul's Cathedral, while Prince William will attend a private memorial in Hyde Park. The Prime Minister says those who tried to divide us only strengthened our resolve. And Sir Keir Starmer is facing a fresh backbench revolt over controversial plans to overhaul special needs education. There are reports that ministers are poised to scrap the system, which ensures pupils with special needs such as autism and ADHD get personalised support whilst at school, currently costing the taxpayer £12 billion a year. Senior party figures warn the reforms risk becoming welfare Mark II as the government faces mounting pressure to balance the books on public finances. Specialist nursery teachers in disadvantaged areas, meanwhile, will be offered £4,500 cash incentives to boost early years education. The new scheme, part of the government's Best Start in Life strategy, will also see Ofsted inspect all new providers within 18 months of opening from next April. The Education Secretary says the plan aims to ensure every child gets the foundation they need to succeed, regardless of their background. Minister for Early Years, Stephen Morgan, told GB News he wants to ensure the system is fit for the future.
I talk to parents all the time, obviously in my own constituency, on visits that I do and those that write to me, and they would agree that the system just isn't working at the moment. And our priority is to get it right at the right place for every child. We've put more money in to send. We put £1 billion in high needs funding in last year. We've put more money in for what capital, so more places in mainstream settings as well. Our Best Start centres, there will be dedicated professionals in those centres to support children with SEND. So the money's going in, the investment's going in, and we want to deliver the reform to make sure the system is fit for the future.
Meanwhile, stateside, Donald Trump is threatening extra tariffs on countries backing BRICS policies he sees as anti-American. The US president says any nation aligning with the economic agenda of the BRICS alliance, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, will face an additional 10% tariff with no exceptions. His post on Truth Social came shortly after BRICS leaders issued a joint statement warning that rising tariffs were threatening global trade. It comes as President Trump's administration is racing to finalise a new string of new trade deals before the July 9th tariff deadline. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading back to Washington today to discuss a potential ceasefire for Gaza. And a woman has been found guilty in Australia of serving a deadly mushroom lunch that killed 3 members of her family. Erin Patterson was convicted in Morwell, Victoria for murder after prosecutors said she knowingly used toxic death cap mushrooms in a home-cooked beef Wellington that left her in-laws and an aunt gravely ill, all 3 of which died later. The court heard she lied to the police and tried to cover her tracks by disposing of evidence. Her defence claimed the poisonings were a tragic accident, but the jury sided with the prosecutors after one guest, a local pastor, survived, but he remains seriously unwell. And parents who lose a pregnancy before 24 weeks will soon be entitled to bereavement leave under new government plans. Ministers will amend the Employment Rights Bill to ensure protected time off after early pregnancy loss, closing a long criticised legal gap. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says the move will give grieving parents space to process their loss, something not currently guaranteed in law unless a stillbirth occurs after 24 weeks. And the annual Festival of San Fermin kicks off today with the first running of the bulls. Hundreds of runners dressed in the traditional white outfits with red neckerchiefs sprinted ahead of the powerful animals along the 875-metre route. Emergency services reported that 6 people were taken to hospital with injuries to their arms and legs, but none were gored during the run. Tourists travelling from all over the world to run alongside the locals over 7 days makes this event one of the most famous across Spain during the summer months. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in just under half an hour. But first, let's check in on the markets.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.358 and €1.158. The price of gold is £2,438.95 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,821 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Yes, about the king.
Good morning, welcome back to Britain's News.
We're actually talking about Blackpool Illumination.
It's
very popular in my family.
Did you see the Daily Mail Mail Online did a piece yesterday, I don't know if it's in the paper as well, about how derelict Blackpool has become, how all the hotels are closing down. It was one of the most depressing pieces of journalism I've read in a long time. I have a very fond place in my heart.
Do you know, one of the things that did for Blackpool, they used to get party conferences there every year, but they didn't invest in hotels, they didn't invest in conference facilities. At the Winter Garden, you remember?
Yeah, of course, very well.
Because they were labouring under the illusion that they were going to get one of these super casinos created by their government. I was tipped the wink by a cabinet minister, the late Tessa Jow, that Blackpool was definitely going to get the super casino. They set up an independent panel to choose. I was in Blackpool waiting for the announcement. It went to Manchester. And Blackpool was then stranded.
If Blackpool had got that licence for a big super casino, how many years ago is that?
That was before 2010.
OK, so, yeah, 10 to 15 years ago then, 15 years ago, that would have changed Blackpool completely, because now it is, honestly, I'm sorry if you're listening in Blackpool, but it has very little to recommend it in 2025. Very, very poor.
Blackpool Tower is very nice.
So many closed down shops. I mean, so many hotels closed down. All these iconic hotels that really were there from the Victorian era, when Blackpool was so brilliantly successful as a seaside town.
Really sad.
And the Mail are doing a series, or Mail Online is doing a series of derelict and sort of decrepit British towns.
Without the illuminations, they'd be in bigger trouble, because people do go up, especially to see the illuminations.
And you still should, frankly, try and support it.
Now, it is exactly 20 years today since those devastating, appalling terror attacks on the London transport system. 52
people died on their way to work that morning. Almost 800 were injured when 4 terrorists detonated bombs on the London Underground and a double-decker bus.
I remember the most shocking part of all of that, the 4 terrorists were all born here. The leader of the gang,
Islamic terrorist,
from Yorkshire, he was a teaching assistant. Shocking. Let's talk to GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White, who is at St Paul's Cathedral, where there is a special commemorative service. Mark.
Yes, good morning to you. I'm staying out of vision because we are filming for you now the arrivals of those attending this memorial service. You see a Nonna Guard made up from volunteers, members of the emergency services as well, outside St Paul's Cathedral. And just in the last few minutes, we have seen the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, arriving. And just now, London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan arriving here as well to take up his position within St Paul's Cathedral. He will actually be giving a reading during the service itself. I've also seen the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, arrive here, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, other dignitaries, and of course members, bereaved family members who are here in significant numbers, along with survivors and other people who were caught up in these horrific events that day on the 7th of July 2005. And also represented, of course, those members of the emergency services, all of the emergency services absolutely inundated on that day, not dealing with just one site of horrific carnage, but 4 separate blast sites on 3 underground trains at Russell Square, between Russell Square and King's Cross, also Edgware Road in West London, in Aldgate in East London, and you know, that bus at Tavistock Square, that iconic double-decker bus that exploded, ripping the roof off that bus and killing 19 people on board that bus as well. An absolutely horrific set of multiple sites that the emergency services were having to try and deal with. And really there was such confusion because at first they didn't know what it was. They thought it may have been power surges on the London Underground. I think then it became apparent with the witnesses that were coming out describing the explosions, the blackened faces from the soot in the underground tunnels, that the police got an idea relatively quickly that these were explosions. And then, of course, once that bus bomb detonated in Tavistock Square, they absolutely knew in no uncertain terms that what they were dealing with was a coordinated series of terrorist attacks. And today it seems incredible to believe that 2 decades have passed since the London bombings, but many people here to remember that day, to pay their respects to those that have been caught up. Seeing the gates opening again here at St Paul's, which may mean that another VIP is due to arrive here. As I say, the Prime Minister, Home Secretary, other senior politicians are here. Another vehicle, marked vehicles moving in here to St Paul's Cathedral, so we'll just wait to see who this is that leaves this vehicle to climb up the stairs for this memorial service. Say the service itself will be a service that's due to last just about an hour. We've got, as always happens, this is Theresa May, I think, former, I may be wrong, it just looks like Theresa May from the back, heading in there. And apologies if it isn't Theresa May. You may get a better shot than me. I don't know if you guys can see any better than me as to who that is.
Definitely Theresa May, who would have been in opposition back in 2005, of course. I think she was probably, I'm not sure what job she was doing then, but I imagine all living former Prime Ministers will attend.
Yeah.
I'm sure of that. She's, of course, Baroness May now. She's
Although
in the
the
House
irony,
Lords.
of course, which the irony of Tony Blair does attend, given that the terrorists who carried out this attack were explicit about the fact that this was a response to Iraq having been invaded
2 years
based
earlier.
on this bogus notion of weapons of mass destruction. That was this day, this tragedy was a direct consequence of Tony Blair's government bombing Iraq.
I think the entire chaos in the Middle East, the huge, massive, flow of migrants, a lot of it goes back to that. It was a terrible war.
Which is by no means any sense meant to excuse what those awful, heinous people did to all of those families on that day. It is not meant to be any explanation, but in terms of piecing together the events which led to 7/7, it cannot be ignored.
And the Ariana Grande concert, likewise, all dates back. The idea that the white British Americans knew best. So we're waiting, also going to be at that service. Curiously, in my view, it's going to be led on behalf of the country by Prince Edward and Sophie Wessex. They were now the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. The King doesn't attend this event because apparently monarchs only attend 25th anniversary commemorations. That is a convention, and a convention, in my view, should have been changed.
Feels like a misstep, that, doesn't it?
It does, actually.
20 years ago.
52, I mean, it's the worst terrorist massacre on our soil ever.
Mark, thank you so much. Mark White will continue to monitor events there in central London for us this morning.
Also, sort of slight issue of protocol that the Mayor of London goes in after the Prime Minister, pulling weight, and the former Prime Minister goes in after that. Very odd.
Sadiq Khan never one to willingly step into the shadows if there is a limelight under which he can bask. Up next, 19-year-old Marcus Fakana has been released from prison in Dubai. You may remember this story. He was on holiday there. He had consensual sex with a 17-year-old British girl. Her mother complained to the authorities because the legal age for sex is 18. He went to jail. Should he have done? He's back home now with his family. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No, tell me how.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Andrew Pearce, stop talking to Matthew Torbett.
I was talking about a beauty competition. Who'd have thought Andrew Pearce was talking to Matthew Torbett about a heterosexual beauty competition? We'll reveal more later.
We just got to quickly dip into the incredible cash prize. It's up for offer, £54,321. Here's all your details.
You have the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just the chance to sit back, relax, and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? £54,321 in tax-free cash has to be won. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
So good luck. Make sure you enter. Right, let's talk about AI Wimbledon judges messing up. Matthew Torbett, is it a good news or a bad news story, this?
Well, it's bad if you're the players, I suppose, and maybe those watching. I suppose it shows technology is infallible, as we know. So so's the human eye. I mean, I have bugbears with technology in sport. But it only counts if you're a Premier League club. My club, Stockport, made the playoff semi-finals this year in League One. Leighton Orient scored a goal that was about 3 yards offside, and the linesman didn't see it. How he didn't see it, I don't know. If we'd have had VAR at that level, that might have helped us.
So VAR only applies to the Premier
League club?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so anything below Premier League.
And the FA Cup final would be
FA Cup does it, yeah. Certain levels of the FA Cup, I think it's post-quarter-finals, potentially.
That's very elite.
But if you're... Well, no, it is, exactly, and I think it would help us... They always say it evens itself out, these decisions, as the season goes on. It doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Particularly if you're the semi-final of a game that could get you back into the Championship after many, many years. It's worth millions of pounds, that sort of game. The day out at Wembley, and that cost us for me. So it's useful in some areas, but obviously it's got to cover lots of things. But
this was our British girl in this match, wasn't it, Alex?
It was.
Sonny Cartal. I'm sorry, I'd never heard of her.
She was the last girl standing.
Yeah. And Pavlyuchenko as well, up against Pavlyuchenko. He's a good player.
But didn't it technically benefit her?
Well, she won. So,
it's all right, then carry on.
Technical benefit.
And she would have lost had the ball been called out. So this is actually, for Brits, a bit of a cheery moment for us. But of course, I'm saying this, I am reading this quite briefly, very quickly. If I got that wrong, I do apologise. But, you know...
the English girl lost.
Did she?
Yes, she did. Yes, I did.
So maybe I'm getting it the wrong way around. Someone lost as a result of this. But everyone's calling it out, saying, look, at the end of the day, what was wrong with the way it was before?
Tradition.
Tradition. People are saying here that the Russians have called... Well, the Russian player was calling it Wimbledon lost charm, become robot-orientated, adding it could have been... something else could have been... there could have been better decisions made. And I think tennis is one of those sports, you just don't think you need AI to do this stuff. You just need a human eye to look at it.
And sometimes some of those line judges get whacked by the ball.
Yes, they do. But that's the other thing I was wondering. I wasn't watching it. I watched the men yesterday. Is it Cameron Norrie, the last Brit standing, was outstanding game yesterday. What did the line judge call? Because surely if the technology fails, you still call it as a human being if you think it's out or whatever.
But
maybe
I think
you
they've
fall
got
back
rid of the line judges altogether, haven't they?
No, they still call it, but I think when it's close and if it's challenged, they don't have Hawkeye anymore. They go to...
But don't you love the fact that somebody forgot to turn the machine on?
Well, human beings also.
Exactly.
Didn't she?
She did. Sorry, just clarifying because she won the game, which there was the second.
She lost the match.
She lost the match.
Yeah.
So it technically was in her favour for the ball being out.
Yeah.
But it didn't change the whole result, of course. But you know, it just like we're going mad with this stuff, aren't we?
Sanitise the sport.
Is it cost saving? That's the
Sanitising humanity.
No, it is. I mean, listen, we'd have had this technology, we wouldn't have won a World Cup in 1966. So, you know, sometimes it has its benefits.
That's a good point.
I think for
what
things...
do you mean by that?
Well, it did.
The last goal didn't go across the net?
Yeah, across the line, apparently.
We're not going to reheat an argument from 1966.
No, absolutely not. We won it.
Bring it back. Let's do a referendum on it.
It was the Germans, so what?
But for things like goal line technology, I think that's useful. We've got to a point where I watched the England women. They were like a little toe offside. That gives you very little benefit on being your own goal. And you've had the goal ruled out and England lost the game. The Lionesses on Saturday night. And it's football fans hate it now as well. And if it's gonna have the impact in tennis as well, people turn off.
I think so.
We're just going to show you the footage from this 7/7 memorial service which is going on this morning. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh are attending St Paul's Cathedral. They have just arrived. On behalf of the royal family, there is Sophie.
Now, the Duchess of Edinburgh, people still call them the Wessexes, of course.
Yeah,
but of course she's Sophie Edinburgh now because he got his title from his father when his father died, Prince Philip. So they are the senior royals. They're representing the country at this memorial service, and I think the King should be there. He is head of state, and I know there is a convention that monarchs only attend, a 25th anniversary service. Conventions are for changing and for breaking, and this was the most serious terrorist massacre on our soil ever.
Should be there, Alex?
I absolutely think he should be there. I mean, he's breaking conventions on lots of things, isn't he? He's trying to modernise the royal family. Why not do it on days like this? This is such a sore moment for every Londoner, anyone, in fact, the whole country. This was an egregious attack on our country, and the King should be there.
Yeah, and he's put a statement out, a very moving statement, and Prince William is at a private memorial service in Hyde Park, the second most senior royal. He's misstepped, hasn't he, the King?
I think it would be a very good PR story for the King if he just turned up and he's broke convention, and what a great tribute that is to those that lost their lives. This was an attack on his soil, his home, all of our homes, and he's done the right thing by paying tribute to these people.
What did you also make of Yvette Cooper's statement saying that we are still under threat from Islamic terrorists and also the far right? That's not the day to combine those two in that statement, is it?
I think it may have been better worded if she'd have said we need to be wary of all terrorism on our shores. I think I appreciate that. Is it a third of terrorist cases? No, I mean the far right stuff. 75% is definitely the case workload of the Islamic fundamentalism. I think it's around 30% that they get from the so-called far right. As a broad base, I think we need to be aware of all terrorism on our shores.
People. I do tend to agree with you there, but at the same time, particularly when it comes to this event, and we've talked, the comments are off the back of that. Really, we know it wasn't far right people who committed the atrocity, and it's really this focus on the far right, this thing that doesn't really have a single ideology or a single group to look into. Doesn't sit well with Brits. We need to focus on really this big, overwhelming problem of radical Islamism in the country. And I think British people want to talk more openly about that.
I mean, think of the other terrible terror attack was the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. 23 people died, many of them young kids. Islamist terror.
Of course it was.
And we know it was far right killed Joe Cox, the Labour MP, shocking and appalling. But the other MP who was killed, David Amos, again, an Islamist terrorist.
Exactly. And I think Jeremy Corbyn raised it the week after the terror attack during the general election campaign, or not long before. And actually, the survivor that was on with Eamon Nelly this morning said the same thing about Tony Blair. It also shows what can happen with foreign wars, thinking that it isn't going to at some point come back to your shores. Both of these people, the 7/7 were brought up here. The Manchester attack obviously came here as refugees or whatever else. But there's obviously an element of these types of people that go, you've done this to where I'm really from, so I'm going to take action. That's the sort of stuff we've got to be wary of.
Absolutely. Right, thank you both. Let's go back to that service of commemoration at St Paul's Cathedral, marking the 20th anniversary of the bombings. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is there. Mark? Mark,
yes, the service itself is just getting underway here at St Paul's Cathedral. You can still see the honour guard outside, but effectively everyone has now arrived because the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh are, as protocol would dictate, the last to arrive at these events. They have now arrived, as you saw the images of them ascending the steps into the cathedral, and shortly before them actually was former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair, who arrived for the service. He of course was Prime Minister at the time of the attacks, and we saw the current Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, as well as another former Prime Minister, Theresa May, the London Mayor and other dignitaries, but of course most importantly were the bereaved family members, the survivors, the members of the emergency services who were here en masse, those members of the fire brigade, the ambulance service, the police who had to respond to all of those different bombing sites and do whatever they could. They were dealing with mass casualty events at each of those 4 bombing sites, and many of those members of the emergency services left their respective services in the years after 7/7 because of the toll that it took on their mental health, and quite understandably. I've spoken to some of those who were involved in forensics and body recovery work down in the underground system, particularly between Russell Square and King's Cross, that deep underground tunnel where most people lost their lives. Some 26 people died and many others were injured on that Piccadilly line train when Jermaine Lindsay, one of the suicide bombers, detonated his device between the 2 stations. And those forensic teams and those body recovery teams were down there for weeks in absolutely boiling hot temperatures. They were dealing with rats in the tunnel. It's just too horrific to describe actually what they had to do to gather evidence and to recover those human remains, but that really impacted their lives, and many members of the response teams in the aftermath of 7/7, as I say, left their respected services because of the toll it took on them. So they're being honoured as well as those who were caught up in that, the 52 innocent victims and the almost 800 others who were injured, some of them very badly injured, who lost limbs in the attacks as well. Let's take a listen to that service, which is now underway.
The spirit of this city, its openness, its endurance, and its steadfast refusal to let hatred prevail. We acknowledge our human frailty, and we ask God to shed his healing light of mercy upon us. For times when fear has bred suspicion, when we have turned inward rather than outward, and when we have allowed difference to divide rather than to enrich society. We pray too for those who wish us harm, and for those who inflict harm on others by devising acts of violence and terror, that God's unfailing grace would convert their hearts and direct them to new paths of peace. May our remembrance move us to compassion, deepen our resolve to stand together against violence in all its forms, and strengthen us in the work of building a city and a world where all may live in safety, dignity, and harmony. Almighty God, from whom all thoughts of truth and peace proceed, kindle, we pray, in the hearts of all the true love of peace, and guide with your pure and peaceable wisdom those who take counsel for the nations of the earth, that in tranquility your kingdom may go forward till the earth is filled with the knowledge of your love, through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
So that was the Dean of St Paul's, the very Reverend Andrew Tremlett. And now we'll be hearing from Reverend Canon Philip Banks, the presenter canon in residence, reading from the Old Testament.
Doug, look to Abraham your father, to Sarah who bore you. For he was but one when I called him, but I blessed him and made him many. For the Lord will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places, and will make her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Listen to me, my people, and give heed to me, my nation. For a teaching will go out from me, and my justice for a light to the peoples. I will bring near my deliverance swiftly. My salvation has gone out, my arms will rule all peoples. The coastlands wait for me, and for my arm they hope. Lift up your eyes to the heavens, and look at the earth beneath, for the heavens will vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and those who live on it will die like gnats. But my salvation will be forever, and my deliverance will never be ended.
Now the choir sings Psalm 46.
Jesus.
And now a reading from the New Testament from Sir Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London.
That will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet none of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows.
Now, as a soloist sings the anthem, we'll have a solemn part of the ceremony where candles signifying the site of each incident on the 7th of July 2005 are borne through the cathedral by representatives of the emergency services, and they'll be placed under the dome before the altar. And those members of the emergency services who will carry those candles are Victor West, an emergency responder for Transport for London, Helen Skeggs, an emergency responder for the Metropolitan Police Service, Guy Tilliston, an emergency responder for London Fire Brigade, and Tracy Russell, an emergency responder for the London Ambulance Service. So after the placement of those candles representing the 4 blast sites, we move to a prayer. Praise to the holiness. Now praise to the holiest. Amen.
Although Russell Square bears the family name of the Dukes of Bedford and once housed the great and the good of London society, its splendid buildings soon became the setting for learning and the never-ending quest for enlightenment. Here, the American master T.S. Eliot worked at the publisher Faber & Faber in a building which is now the home of the School of African and Oriental Studies. The University of London has a home here, and the British Museum is but a stone's throw away. The Hull International Business School is there, and the London Mathematical Society. Here, men and women seek understanding, and their search for truth challenges the ignorance which casts so much darkness over our world. That was Ellie Pastolis, wife of survivor Professor Philip Pastolis, who survived the King's Cross blast. We'll now hear from Tony Silvestro, emergency service responder for British Transport Police at the site of the Aldgate blast.
The Aldgate was the easternmost gate in the old London wall of Roman times, a place of faith from earliest times. There was an Augustan priory there in the 12th century and 3 city churches still called the faithful to worship. Jews settled there in the 12th century, and the area boasts London's oldest synagogue at Bevis Marks. Immigrants from Antwerp started making English Delftware there in the late 16th century, and when African-American Phyllis Wheatley was not able to get her religious and moral poetry published in Boston, Massachusetts, she found a more enlightened publisher in Aldgate. Now it is a busy crossroads of business and commerce, with people of all faiths and none trading and dealing with the rest of the world.
So as the choir sings again, we're about to hear from the Reverend Julie Nicholson, mother of Jennifer Vanda Ann Nicholson, who was caught up in the atrocities at Edgware Road.
Edgware Road runs through the northwest of London from Marble Arch to Edgware. It was once part of a Roman road, Watling Street, hence almost 10 miles of relatively straight thoroughfare, something which any Londoner will tell you is pretty unusual. It claims to have been the site of the first Indian restaurant, and in the 18th century it was a refuge for Huguenot migrants escaping persecution in France. And in the 19th century, Arabs settled there from the Ottoman Empire, joined in the 1950s by Egyptians, and in the 1970s by Lebanese and Algerians. Edgware Road is cosmopolitan and is proud of its ethnic mix and diverse resources. George Persakis, the survivor of the bus bomb in Tavistock Square. Remarkably, he walked away from that devastation uninjured, but still bears the emotional scars today.
A statue of Mahatma Gandhi looks out across Tavistock Square and echoes the campaign for peace and non-violent resistance which characterized Gandhi's mission in life. Even before this great man's memorial was erected here, a cherry tree was planted to remember the victims of the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And more recently, the square became a focus for the conscientious objectors of all over the world and in every age. No wonder then that Tavistock Square is sometimes called the Garden of Peace. The healing qualities of peace are also articulated through the ministry of the medical profession, whose headquarters the British Medical Association sits alongside the square.
So as the choir sings again after that emotional reading from George Pasakadakis, the survivor of the Tavistock bus bomb, we await conclusion remarks from Graham Fuchs. Graham is father of David Fuchs, 22-year-old young man who died in the Edgware Road bombing. Graham and his wife didn't know for days what had happened to their young son, and then eventually that news, the news they'd been dreading, was broken to them. Very shortly we'll hear from Graham Fuchs in his own words.
These four pieces of London epitomise what is great about this city: an international crossroads of diversity and ingenuity, tolerance and respect, challenge and opportunity. When four bombs exploded on the 7th of July 2005, lives were destroyed and the flame of hope faltered for what seemed like an eternal moment. For many people, nothing was the same again. And yet everything was the same again, because the good which is in Londoners and the countless visitors who they host at any given moment is not erased by hatred or by threat, or rather is fostered to produce a harvest of hope for each generation.
So now the reading of the names. All 52 of the victims' names will be read out by Saba Edwards, daughter of Benaz Mazaka, who died at King's Cross, and Thelma Stober, a survivor at Aldgate.
King's Cross, Russell Square. James Adams. Samantha Badham. Philip Beer. Anna Brandt. Kieran Cassidy. Rochelle Chong Foyen. Elizabeth Daplin. Arthur Frederick. Carolina Gluck. Gamze Gunnerol. Lee Christopher Harris. Vajera Ikiyagu. Emily Jenkins. Adrian Johnson. Helen Catherine Jones. Susan Levy. Shelley Marie Mather. Michael Matsushita. James Mays. Benaz Mazaka. Michaela Otto. Atik Sharifi. Ihab Slimani. Christian Joya Dewara Small. Monica Sachoka. Marla Trivedi.
Aldgate. Lee Braisden. Benedetta Chiachia. Richard Ellery. Richard Martin Gray. Anne Moffat. Fiona Stevenson. Carrie Louise Taylor. Edgware Road. Michael Stanley Brewster. Jonathan Downey. David Fuchs. Colin Morley. Jennifer Vanda Ann Nicholson. Laura Suzanne Webb. Tavistock Square. Anthony Fatai Williams. Jamie Gordon. Giles Vernon Hart. Marie Joan Hartley. Miriam Hyman. Shahara Islam. Nitu Jian. Sam Song Lai. Shanuga Nirashoni Paratha Sangari. Anat Rosenberg. Philip Stewart Russell. William Wise. Gladys Wundoa.
And now, inside the cathedral and outside this cathedral, everyone pauses for a minute's silence.
Afternoon, Britain. You've just been listening and watching to a memorial service at St Paul's Cathedral in memory of those who lost their lives on the 7th of July 2005.
Yes, of course, 20 years today since those devastating terrorist attacks in central London on the transport system, on tubes and on buses.
Yes, 52 people died, almost 800 injured when 4 terrorists detonated bombs on the London Underground and on a double-decker bus.
Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White has taken a personal look back at the tragedy that he lived through and reported on. An atrocity that marked the first use of suicide bombings in Britain.
Something's gone badly wrong. We really don't know at the moment. It's loud bangs. We need ambulances and water to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. Russell Square is a priority. We're going to have it as a major incident, so we'll get ambulances to you wherever.